The alley was dark, narrow, and smelled like rain and fear. The Mafia boss was halfway to his car when a small hand grabbed his coat. "Daddy, please help her." He turned. His daughter stood there shaking, eyes wide, pointing toward the end of the alley. A woman was on the ground. 3 men stood over her, laughing, circling like wolves. "Stay here," he told his daughter, softly, calmly, the same voice he used before wars began. He walked forward alone. One man stepped out. "Keep walking, old man." He didn't. What happened next lasted less than 10 seconds. A flash of movement, a thud, then another, then silence. 3 men down, breathing but broken, the woman alive. Sirens wailed in the distance. He took his daughter's hand and left, like nothing had happened. The city whispered all night, but the real shock came the next morning. A black car stopped outside his mansion. Not police, not rivals. A judge stepped out, files in hand, eyes locked on the door, because the woman he saved wasn't just a stranger, and what he'd done the night before had just dragged the underworld straight into a courtroom. Stay with me until the end, because what the judge reveals next will force the Mafia boss to choose between his power and his daughter's future. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Vincent Marcelli had built his empire on 3 simple rules. Never leave witnesses, never trust anyone completely, and never, ever let emotion cloud judgment. For 25 years, these rules had kept him alive in a world where most men didn't see their 40th birthday. They had made him the most feared and respected boss in Chicago. They had protected his family, his territory, and his legacy. But all 3 rules shattered the moment his 8-year-old daughter whispered those 4 words in that dark alley. Let me take you back to that night, because what happened in those 10 seconds didn't just save a stranger's life. It triggered a chain of events that would expose secrets buried for decades and force a man who controlled half the city to face the one thing he couldn't control: his daughter. The evening had started like any other Thursday. Vincent had finished a meeting at his restaurant downtown, the kind of meeting where handshakes sealed million-dollar deals and broken promises ended careers. Sophia, his daughter, had been waiting in his office doing homework at the mahogany desk that had belonged to his father and his father before him. She was the light in his dark world, 8 years old with her mother's green eyes and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Vincent had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier, and since then, Sophia had become his entire universe. He arranged his schedule around her school plays, her soccer games, her bedtime stories. The most dangerous man in Chicago read fairy tales every night and made pancakes shaped like butterflies every Sunday morning. "Ready to go home, princess?" Vincent had asked, closing his laptop and straightening his tie. Sophia nodded, gathering her colored pencils and notebooks with the careful precision she had learned from watching her father organize his own affairs. Everything had its place. Everything had its purpose. They walked to the parking garage together, her small hand tucked safely in his large one. The garage was underground, dimly lit, connected to the restaurant through a series of tunnels that Vincent's grandfather had built during Prohibition. Most people didn't even know these tunnels existed. They were part of the family's history, carved into the foundation of the building like scars in stone. The black Mercedes waited in its usual spot, polished and ready. Vincent's driver had gone home hours earlier. Thursday evenings were their tradition, just father and daughter, driving through the city while Sophia told him about her day, and he pretended that the weight of his empire wasn't crushing his shoulders. That's when they heard it. A scream, muffled but desperate, echoing through the concrete walls of the garage. Vincent's hand instinctively moved toward the gun concealed beneath his jacket, his body tensing with the reflexes that had kept him alive through 3 decades of violence. "Daddy?" Sophia's voice was small, uncertain. Vincent paused, listening. Another sound. Laughter. Male voices, rough and cruel. the kind of laughter that preceded terrible things. His first instinct was to get Sophia in the car and drive away. That was the smart choice, the safe choice, the choice that followed his rules. But Sophia's grip on his hand tightened, and when he looked down, he saw something in her eyes that stopped him cold. Not fear for herself, but for someone else. Compassion that she had inherited from her mother. The kind of pure empathy that Vincent thought had been beaten out of him years ago. "Someone's hurt," she whispered. Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the familiar war between the father he wanted to be and the man he had to be. In his world, curiosity killed more than cats. It killed entire bloodlines. But Sophia was already moving toward the sound, her small feet echoing in the concrete space. Vincent followed, every instinct screaming at him to turn around, to protect his daughter from whatever they were about to find. The garage connected to an alley through a service entrance that most people ignored. The door was slightly ajar, letting in the smell of rain and something darker. Violence had a scent, metallic and sharp, and Vincent recognized it immediately. He pushed the door open slowly, keeping Sophia behind him. The alley stretched out like a canyon between two buildings, narrow and filled with shadows. At the far end, under a flickering streetlight, 3 men surrounded a woman who lay crumpled on the wet asphalt. Vincent's trained eye took in the scene instantly. The woman was young, maybe mid-20s, dressed in a business suit that was now torn and dirty. Her purse lay scattered nearby, contents spilled across the ground. The 3 men were clearly enjoying themselves, taking their time, savoring the power they held over someone helpless. This wasn't a robbery. This was something much worse. Vincent's hand moved to his phone, ready to call his security team, ready to handle this the way he handled everything else, from a distance, through intermediaries, without getting his hands dirty or putting his daughter at risk. But then Sophia stepped around him, and her small voice cut through the night like a blade. "Daddy, please help her." 4 words that changed everything. Vincent looked down at his daughter, saw the trust in her eyes, the absolute faith that her father could fix anything, stop any evil, protect any innocent person who needed help. She believed in him not as Vincent Marcelli, the feared Mafia boss, but as her daddy, the man who read her bedtime stories and chased away her nightmares. In that moment, he realized something that terrified him more than any rival gang or federal investigation. His daughter didn't know what he really was. She thought he was a hero, and maybe, just for tonight, he could be Dual B. Vincent looked at the 3 men again, calculating distances, angles, escape routes. His mind worked like a machine, processing variables the way other men processed morning coffee. The woman on the ground wasn't moving much, which meant time was running out. The men were drunk, sloppy, overconfident. They hadn't noticed him yet. "Stay right here, Sophia," he whispered, his voice carrying the quiet authority that made grown men tremble. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Sophia nodded, pressing herself against the brick wall, still clutching her school backpack like a shield. Vincent stepped into the alley. His footsteps were silent on the wet asphalt, decades of moving through dangerous places having taught him how to become a ghost when necessary. He was 20 feet away when the first man noticed him. "Hey!" The guy was big, maybe 6'3", wearing a leather jacket that had seen better years. His face was flushed with alcohol and adrenaline. "I said keep walking, Grandpa." Vincent stopped walking, but he didn't turn around. "Let her go," he said quietly. His voice carried no emotion, no threat, just a simple statement of fact. The second man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the alley walls. "Or what? You gonna call the cops?" He was smaller than his friend, but carried himself with the nervous energy of someone looking for a fight. The third man hadn't said anything yet. He was the smart one, Vincent realized, the one who sensed that something wasn't right about this situation. His hand was already moving toward what looked like a knife tucked into his belt. Vincent had been in situations like this more times than he could count, but those times, he'd been the predator. Tonight, watching these men circle a helpless woman while his daughter watched from the shadows. He was something different. Last chance, Vincent said, taking another step forward. The big man in the leather jacket made his choice. He charged. What happened next was a masterclass in controlled violence that would have impressed Vincent's old military instructors. The charging man swung a wild right hook that would have broken most people's jaw. Vincent moved 6 inches to the left, caught the man's wrist, and used his own momentum to drive his face into the brick wall behind him. The impact was solid, final. Leather jacket dropped like a stone. The second man pulled a knife, but he was drunk and angry and made the mistake of telegraphing his move. Vincent caught his knife hand at the wrist, twisted until something cracked, and delivered a precise elbow to the man's solar plexus. He folded in half, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The third man, the smart one, had his own knife out and was moving carefully, professionally. This one had training. This one was dangerous. But Vincent had been dangerous since before this man was born. They circled each other for maybe 3 seconds. The smart man feinted left, then came in low and fast, aiming for Vincent's ribs. It was a good move, executed properly. Vincent deflected the blade with his forearm, stepped inside the man's guard, and grabbed his throat with one hand while driving his knee into the man's stomach. The knife clattered to the ground. The man went down hard and stayed down. 7 seconds, maybe 8. Vincent straightened his tie and walked over to the woman on the ground. She was conscious, but dazed, blood trickling from her nose. Her eyes were wide with shock and fear. "Are you hurt badly?" Vincent asked, his voice gentle now, the same tone he used with Sophia when she had nightmares. The woman tried to speak, but only managed a whisper. "Thank you." Vincent helped her sit up, checking for serious injuries. Nothing appeared broken, but she would need medical attention. In the distance, sirens were getting louder. Someone had called the police. "What's your name?" Vincent asked. "Sarah," she managed. "Sarah Chen." The name meant nothing to Vincent, but he filed it away anyway. In his business, every detail mattered. "Sarah, the police are coming. Tell them 3 men attacked you and someone scared them off. Don't describe me. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded, still shaking. Vincent stood and walked back toward Sophia, who was exactly where he had left her, eyes wide but trusting. She looked at the 3 men on the ground, then at her father, and something shifted in her expression. Not fear, but understanding. A glimpse of the man her father really was, beneath the bedtime stories and butterfly pancakes. "Are they dead?" she whispered. "No, princess. They're just sleeping." Sophia nodded gravely, accepting this explanation the way children accept that monsters live. Under beds and heroes always win in the end. Vincent took her hand and led her quickly back through the garage to their car. By the time the first police cruiser arrived at the alley, the black Mercedes was 3 blocks away, moving through late-night traffic like any other car carrying a father and daughter home from dinner. They drove in silence for several minutes. Sophia stared out the window at the city lights, processing what she had witnessed in the way that 8-year-olds process things too big for their understanding. "Daddy?" she finally said. "Yes, princess? Will that lady be okay?" Vincent glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She was still holding her backpack, still wearing the school clothes that marked her as innocent, untouched by the violence that had shaped his life. "She'll be fine," he said. "The police will take care of her." Sophia nodded, satisfied with this answer. But Vincent could see her thinking, filing away questions that she wasn't ready to ask yet. Questions about why her father had moved like that, fought like that, made 3 dangerous men disappear in less than 10 seconds. Questions that would come later, when she was older, when the fairy tale version of her father began to crack and reveal the truth underneath. They pulled into the circular driveway of the Marcelli estate 20 minutes later. The house was massive, built like a fortress, but designed to look like a family home. Security cameras tracked their movement from the street to the front door. Motion sensors lit their path. Armed guards watched from positions that Sophia had never noticed, but Vincent checked automatically. Bath time, then bed, Vincent said as they walked through the front door. School tomorrow. Can I stay up an extra hour? Sophia asked, testing boundaries the way children always do. Not tonight, princess. It's been a long day. Sophia accepted this with the resignation of a child who knew when negotiation was pointless. She kissed her father goodnight and headed upstairs with Maria, the housekeeper who had been with the family since before Sophia was born. Vincent waited until he heard the bathwater running before he walked into his study and closed the door. The room was lined with books that he actually read, not the fake collections that some men kept for show. History, philosophy, military strategy. The education of a man who understood that power without knowledge was just violence waiting to happen. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat behind his desk, thinking about what had happened in that alley, about the look in his daughter's eyes, about the choice he had made when she asked him to help a stranger. Vincent had killed his first man at 19. By 30, he had built an organization that controlled significant portions of Chicago's underground economy. He laundered money through legitimate businesses, settled disputes that the police couldn't handle, and provided services that society needed but wouldn't acknowledge. He told himself that he was a businessman who sometimes used violence as a tool, that everything he did was to build something for Sophia, to give her a future free from the choices that had defined his life. But tonight, in that alley, his daughter had seen him for what he really was, a man who could make 3 dangerous people disappear in 10 seconds, a man who carried violence like other men carried car keys, and she had asked him to use that violence to help someone who needed help. Vincent sipped his whiskey and wondered what that meant, what lesson his daughter had learned, what questions she would ask when she was old enough to understand the answers. The phone rang at 11:45, Vincent's private line, the number that only a dozen people in the world possessed. Yes? Mr. Marcelli? The voice was unfamiliar, professional, careful. This is Detective Morrison, Chicago PD. I'm calling about an incident that occurred tonight in the alley behind Torino's restaurant. Vincent's expression didn't change, but his mind shifted into the mode that had kept him alive for 30 years. Careful, cautious, revealing nothing. I'm sorry, Detective. I'm not familiar with any incident. 3 men were found unconscious in that alley around 10:30 tonight. They had been assaulted. A woman named Sarah Chen was also found at the scene. She claims that someone intervened to help her, but she couldn't provide a description of her rescuer. I see, Vincent said. How can I help you? Well, sir, that's the interesting part. Sarah Chen works for the federal court system. She's a clerk for Judge Patricia Hawthorne, and Judge Hawthorne asked me to give you a call. Vincent felt something cold settle in his stomach. Judge Patricia Hawthorne was not a name he wanted to hear at midnight on a Thursday. She was the federal judge who had been investigating organized crime in Chicago for the past 2 years. She was smart, relentless, and completely incorruptible. She was also the judge who had been building a case against Vincent Marcelli for 18 months. I still don't understand how this concerns me, Detective. Judge Hawthorne would like to speak with you tomorrow morning, Mr. Marcelli. 10 o'clock. Her chambers. She said to tell you that it's about your daughter's future. The line went dead. Vincent set down the phone and stared at the amber liquid in his glass. In the space of one evening, his carefully constructed world had begun to crack. He had broken his own rules to save a stranger. His daughter had witnessed him commit violence. And now a federal judge who wanted to destroy him was asking for a meeting about Sophia's future. Upstairs, he could hear Sophia brushing her teeth, getting ready for bed, humming the song from some cartoon movie, the sound of innocence and normalcy and everything he had tried to protect her from. Tomorrow, he would have to face Judge Patricia Hawthorne and find out exactly how much his moment of heroism was going to cost. Vincent didn't sleep that night. He stood at his bedroom window, watching the security lights sweep across the grounds, thinking about choices and consequences. Every decision in his world created ripples, and those ripples eventually came back to shore. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a tsunami building on the horizon. At 6 in the morning, he made Sophia her usual breakfast. Pancakes shaped like butterflies, orange juice in the glass with the cartoon characters, everything exactly the same as every other Friday morning. But when she came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she stopped in the doorway and stared at him. "Daddy, you look tired." Vincent forced a smile. "Just thinking about work, princess." Sophia climbed into her chair and picked at her pancakes, glancing at her father every few seconds. Children notice things that adults miss: the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand trembled slightly when he poured his coffee, the fact that he kept checking his phone even though it hadn't made a sound. "Is the lady from last night okay?" Sophia asked quietly. Vincent's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "What lady?" "The one you helped. Is she better now?" For a moment, Vincent considered lying, telling his daughter that it had been a dream, that nothing had happened, that her father was just a businessman who read bedtime stories and made butterfly pancakes. But something in her eyes stopped him. She deserved better than lies. "She's going to be fine," he said. "The doctors will take good care of her." Sophia nodded and took a bite of pancake. Good. She seemed really scared. Vincent watched his daughter eat, marveling at the way she could process violence and move on to pancakes without missing a beat. Children were resilient in ways that adults forgot how to be. They accepted the world as they found it and adapted accordingly. At 7:30, Maria arrived to take Sophia to school. Vincent kissed his daughter goodbye and watched through the window as the armored SUV pulled away, 2 security cars following at a discreet distance. Sophia waved from the back window, her bright smile cutting through the bulletproof glass. Only then did Vincent allow himself to think about what was coming. Judge Patricia Hawthorne was not someone you kept waiting. She had been appointed to the federal bench 12 years earlier, after a career as a prosecutor that had left organized crime families across the Midwest scrambling to find new strategies. She was methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless when she smelled corruption. Vincent had been watching her case against his organization develop for months. She was building something big, something that could bring down everything he had spent decades creating. But it had been theoretical until now. A chess game played through lawyers and intermediaries. This morning, the chess game was about to become very real. Vincent dressed carefully. A charcoal suit that cost more than most people made in a month, but conservative enough to show respect for the court. Italian leather shoes that made no sound on marble floors. A tie that suggested success without flaunting wealth. The uniform of a man who moved between two worlds and belonged fully to neither. At 9:15, Vincent's driver pulled up to the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago. The building was a monument to justice, all marble columns and carved eagles, designed to intimidate anyone who walked through its doors. Vincent had been here before, for depositions and hearings, always as a defendant, never as someone seeking help. Today felt different. Security was tight but professional. Vincent submitted to the metal detector, allowed his briefcase to be searched, answered questions with the patience of a man who understood that cooperation was sometimes the best form of resistance. Nobody mentioned the meeting with Judge Hawthorne. Nobody asked why he was there, but Vincent could feel eyes on him as he walked through the corridors. Whispers followed in his wake. Vincent Marcelli didn't come to federal court unless something big was happening. Judge Hawthorne's chambers were on the 7th floor, behind a door marked only with her name and title. Vincent's lawyer had offered to accompany him, but Vincent had declined. Some conversations were too important for intermediaries. He knocked twice and waited. "Come in." Judge Patricia Hawthorne was smaller than Vincent had expected, maybe 5'4" in her judicial robes, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of the room simultaneously. Her chambers were sparse, functional, lined with law books that showed obvious signs of use. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Mr. Marcelli, thank you for coming." Vincent sat carefully, keeping his hands visible, his posture respectful but not submissive. Your Honor, I understand you wanted to discuss my daughter. Judge Hawthorne studied him for a long moment, and Vincent had the unsettling feeling that she was reading his thoughts. Tell me about last night. I'm afraid I don't understand. 3 men attacked my court clerk in an alley behind Torino's restaurant. Someone intervened. Those 3 men are now in the hospital with injuries that suggest professional training, military training. Or worse. Vincent said nothing. Sarah Chen is 26 years old. She's worked for me for 3 years. She's brilliant, dedicated, and completely innocent of anything that should have put her in danger. But someone knew where to find her. Someone knew her routine. Someone wanted to hurt her because of her connection to my court. Vincent felt pieces clicking together in his mind, forming a picture he didn't like. You think the attack was connected to your work? I think the attack was connected to my investigation into organized crime in this city. Specifically, my investigation into you. Judge Hawthorne opened a file on her desk and pulled out a photograph. It showed Sarah Chen smiling at what looked like an office party, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by other court employees. Sarah has been helping me research financial records for the past 6 months. Bank transfers, shell companies, money laundering operations. She's very good at finding patterns that other people miss. Vincent's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. If Sarah Chen had been targeted because of her work on his case, then last night hadn't been a random act of violence. It had been an assassination attempt, disguised as a street crime. And Vincent had stopped it. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Judge Hawthorne leaned back in her chair. Because according to Sarah's description, her rescuer was approximately 6 feet tall, well-dressed, and moved like someone with extensive combat training. He disabled 3 attackers in less than 10 seconds and disappeared before police arrived. She pulled out another photograph. This one was a security camera image, grainy and dark, showing a man in an expensive suit walking away from an alley. The image was too unclear to make a positive identification, but Vincent recognized his own silhouette. The timestamp shows this was taken at 10:28 last night, 12 minutes before police arrived at the scene. Vincent studied the photograph without expression. I'm not sure what you want me to say. I want you to tell me why Vincent Marcelli, who has spent 30 years avoiding any situation that might put him in legal jeopardy, risked everything to save a woman who works for the judge trying to destroy him. The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Vincent could hear the clock on Judge Hawthorne's wall ticking, counting seconds that felt like hours. Sometimes people do the right thing, he said finally, even when it's not smart. Judge Hawthorne smiled for the first time since he had entered her chambers. It wasn't a friendly smile, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the smile of someone who had just heard an answer that surprised them. Your daughter was with you. It wasn't a question. Vincent's hands clenched involuntarily, but his voice remained steady. My daughter was never in danger. No, I don't think she was. I think you made sure of that. But she saw what happened, didn't she? She saw her father take down 3 men who were threatening an innocent woman. Vincent said nothing. I have a daughter too, Mr. Marcelli. She's 17 now, applying to colleges, dreaming about changing the world. Do you know what keeps me awake at night? Vincent waited. The fear that someday she'll discover that her mother isn't the hero she thinks she is, that the work I do, the choices I make, the people I send to prison, that all of it comes with a cost, and that cost might eventually touch her. Judge Hawthorne stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. From 7 floors up, Chicago looked peaceful, orderly, like a model train set spread out under glass. I've been building a case against you for 18 months. Wire transfers, recorded conversations, testimony from people who used to work for you. I'm very close to having everything I need for an indictment. Vincent felt his throat tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. But last night something changed. Last night you saved the life of someone I care about, someone who matters to me professionally and personally, and you did it in front of your daughter, knowing that it might expose you, knowing that it might cost you everything. She turned back to face him. That tells me something about who you really are underneath all the rest of it. Vincent found his voice. What do you want? I want to offer you a choice. The same choice that every parent faces eventually. You can continue being Vincent Marcelli, head of a criminal organization, looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life, waiting for the day when someone comes for your daughter to get to you. Or you can be Sophia's father. Completely. Permanently. Without reservation. Judge Hawthorne returned to her desk and pulled out a thick folder. This contains everything I have on your organization. Financial records, witness statements, surveillance footage, enough to put you away for 20 years and dismantle everything you've built. Vincent stared at the folder, feeling the weight of 30 years pressing down on his shoulders. But I'm prepared to make it all disappear. Every file, every investigation, every pending charge. You walk away clean, with enough legitimate assets to provide for your daughter's future. College, medical school, whatever she wants. Vincent's mouth was dry. In exchange for what? Complete cooperation. You tell me everything about your organization. Names, locations, financial structures, ongoing operations. You help me build cases against everyone who worked with you, everyone who competed with you, everyone who profited from the violence and corruption that you helped create. The room was silent except for the ticking clock and the distant sound of traffic 7 floors below. And then? Vincent asked. Then you disappear. New identity, new location, new life. You and Sophia, somewhere far from Chicago, far from anyone who might recognize the name Marcelli. You become a normal father with a normal job, raising a daughter who never has to know what her father used to be. Vincent thought about Sophia's bright smile that morning, her trust in him, her belief that her daddy was a hero who helped people. How do I know you'll keep your word? Judge Hawthorne opened her desk drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Because I'm not the only one making this offer. Vincent read the document quickly. It was a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office, co-signed by the FBI Director and the head of the Justice Department's Organized Crime Task Force. An official immunity agreement, conditional on full cooperation and complete withdrawal from criminal activity. Vincent looked at the immunity agreement, then at Judge Hawthorne, then at the photograph of Sophia on his phone. 4 words whispered in a dark alley had led to this moment. His daughter's voice asking him to help a stranger had started a chain reaction that would either destroy everything he'd built or give him everything he'd ever really wanted. The choice was simple: keep the empire and lose his daughter's innocence forever, or sacrifice everything for the chance to be the father she believed him to be. Vincent picked up the pen and signed his name, trading 30 years of power for a lifetime of bedtime stories. Sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose love over war. Sometimes the strongest choice is walking away. And sometimes, when your daughter whispers, "Please help her," you discover that being a hero was inside you all along.